Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Slam Talk Sports. I'm your host, as always, Mr. Darcy Slam Duncan. It is a beautiful Friday afternoon here in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, and we had the game of the year last night. Hawthorn and Collingwood draw 93 points apiece. It was a joy to watch from my couch at home here in Essendon. We're going to talk about that in a second, but before we do that, you know where to find me. It is Slam Talk Sports on Instagram, on TikTok, on X/Twitter, on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and of course on YouTube where you're watching me right now. How good was last night's game? The first half was a good contest. In reality, I thought Hawthorn should have been further in front, even though they were actually 5 points behind at the main break. They kicked abhorrently in that first half. For the game, what they ended up kicking, 13 goals, 15. Really, really poor. But I thought the play was good. I thought it was a high-quality, high-standard game, and it really turned into an enthralling back-and-forth contest in that last quarter and the last half at large. When Connor McDonald kicked a goal, I think in the third quarter, I thought, okay, it's over. Hawthorn are going to open the pies up. They're going to find a way to finally convert on these set shots and really have a comfortable 20 to 30 point win. That's not what eventuated. After Nick Dacos kicked a goal from 55 metres out, he hit that home run like he was Shohei Ohtani. The crowd erupted, and we knew we were in for another Thursday night classic between these two historic rivals. Hawthorn and Collingwood play so many great games. I know Hawthorn have had the wood over the pies for the best part of the last 40 years, but they always play really, really good matches. Of course, the 2011 prelim final, but there's been so many other close contests littered throughout the last 25 to 30 years. Just some observations from last night. I loved Nick Watson's game. I think he is the best forward in football. He's so damaging. He's so dynamic. Is there anyone quicker over 20 metres? I'm not sure. If he's goal side, well, it's a goal. It's that simple. You cannot catch him, you cannot impact him, and he can score from any angle on the football field. He is so electric. He could power my house. Okay, and I know the power prices or electricity prices are pretty steep these days, but Nick Watson generates that much heat when he's around the football. It is amazing to see. Also, Dan Houston back to his absolute best. 135 SuperCoach points last night. He had a real impact on the game, particularly at the end of the game and at the start of the game. 32 disposals for Dan Houston. He was probably Collingwood's best on the evening. Nick Dacos was just, average. I thought he was average, realistically. He didn't have a great impact on the game. He kicked an awesome goal in the late stages of the third quarter. He had how many touches? He had 34 disposals, but 9 of them were turnovers. It was so unlike Dacos. Will he be in the votes? Well, the Brownlow's a sham, so he might get the 3 votes last night. But I thought he was decent without being amazing. Hawthorn's inaccuracy was the big story of the game until the dying stages when they finally kicked one through the big sticks. And it was Dylan Moore delivering after the siren. What more dramatic finish could you ask for than Moore tackling Moore high to give him a chance to deliver an awesome draw on the big stage on Thursday Night Footy? Hawthorn, they come out of that game thinking, geez, we really should have won it, but ultimately we shouldn't have had the chance to draw it because Darcy Moore gave away a terrible free kick in the dying stages. He dropped the mark, he gave away a free kick. Dylan Moore converts after the siren. Darcy Moore had a nightmarish game, in my opinion. 3 or 4 goals, I think, were at his hands. And I know it's his first game back from the hamstring. I know he's only played 2 games this season, but he really needs to tighten up defensively because his best and his worst are so far apart. We know how good he is when he's at his best. Let's think back to last year's qualifying final against Adelaide where he was best on ground, intercept marking everything. But his worst can really, really hurt you, and that was the case last night. Hawthorn, McDonald, 28 and 3 goals. I think Connor McDonald's having a breakout season. He's so damaging. Hawthorn Smalls and Dylan Moore and Connor McDonald and Nick Watson, they're the best in the competition. That's going to take them very far into September. On the injury side of things, Sidebottom got injured. He's busted his hand. Will he play in 2 weeks' time for Penrith's record-breaking game against West Coast? I think he will. Harry Perriman did a hamstring. He's probably going to miss at least a month of football. James Sicily had an ankle. He came back on. He came back off. I think he's cooked potentially for a week or two. It didn't look great. Darcy Cameron has a knee injury. He got injured, I think, early in the third quarter. He came back on, looked very, very proppy, didn't have much impact, came back off. It became the Oscar Steen show after that. We have to monitor what's wrong with DC. And Nick Dacos himself was injured in this game. He was getting a lot of work done on his legs, on his hip. He had a corky a couple of weeks ago. It was a short break into Thursday night football. So I think he'll be fine next week. But he was probably suffering the effects of a short turnaround into a big Thursday night game against one of the leading contenders, the Hawks. They're going to be up there. We know they're going to be pretty good. Inaccuracy was terrible, but they play a great brand of footy, and they will be contending deep in September, in my opinion. I've seen enough out of this team to know they've got the depth to go all the way, which I didn't think a month ago. I was wrong there. They're going to get Will Day back in a couple of weeks' time, and their midfield looks great. They killed the Pies in the clearances early in the game. I think they won them quite easily. They won the hit-outs by a lot as well. So Hawthorn's weakness, in my opinion, which was the midfield, which was the guts, they're getting it done by a committee right now. There's guys coming in. I wasn't sure what the impact would be. I'm talking Josh Ward. I'm talking McDonald. I didn't know that Newcomb could elevate again to be an absolute star of this competition. He was a good player. He's been a good player. I think he's now elevating to be an absolute star of this comp. He's so consistent. He does it every single week. So I don't have as many concerns about the Hawks. And the Pies, they don't lose many admirers because they took it up to the Hawks for the best part of 2.5 quarters. I know Hawthorn momentum, it swung in that third quarter. They had more ascendancy, but the Pies fought back. They didn't lay down, and they were in a position to win this game, which they probably should have, considering they were up by 7 points with a minute left. Just a great game of footy, and I think that's 2 finalists that we hopefully see again in 5 or 6 months' time. Not 6 months' time, the season will be over. Hopefully we see them again in September, because it's always great when the Hawks play the Pies. Now, let's talk about a massive round 8 of AFL action. We go to Friday night football, and here's the Western Bulldogs taking on Fremantle at Marvel Stadium, 7:30 p.m. We start with Friday night football, and it is a double header. An absolute nightmare for super coaches like myself. But if you're on the couch watching from home, it's not a bad way to start your weekend. It is the Western Bulldogs taking on Fremantle. As I said, at Marvel at 7:30 p.m. Freo are favoured by 19.5 points. These are your ins and your outs. In for the Dogs comes Lachlan McNeil, Latham Vandermeer, Harvey Gallagher, Tim English, Artie Jones, and Nick Caulfield. Out goes Cooper Hines, Adam Treloar, Oscar Baker, Lachlan Smith, Lockie Jakes, and Ryan Gardner. For Fremantle, in comes the prancing pony himself, Patrick Voss, and out goes Judd McVie, who is out with an illness. The Doggies dropped everyone apart from Adam Treloar. That's 5 omitted and 1 managed. They are very upset, and I would be too, because they got their asses handed to them over the last 2 weeks. I know they've had injuries, the Doggies, but they haven't played a good brand of football. It's been hard to watch what the Cats did to them last week and what the Swans did to them. Sorry, the Swans did to them last week, what the Cats did to them 2 weeks ago. Oh, what am I reading this game? I think the Dogs are a chance in this one. They have to be a chance in this one. But I honestly think that Freo are one of the best teams in football. So they should be too strong for them. We know that Tom Liberatore is still out. We know that Rory Lobb is still out. So I do think the Dogs' back six remains exposed. You see those defenders there, Jed Buslinger, Harvey Gallagher, Buku Karmas, Nick Caulfield, Michael Selwood. That doesn't give me a lot of hope as a Doggies fan when I know the quality in the front six for Fremantle: Josh Tracy, Murphy Reid, Jai Amos, Paddy Voss, Shea Bolton. I think it'll be too much in the end. I know that Fremantle have played some shocking football when they've come down to Victoria in the past, particularly Marvel Stadium. What was it last year that St. Kilda and Fremantle played one of the worst games we've ever seen in the history of this sport? I hope that isn't the case tonight at Marvel. I think Fremantle will be too strong. Will they cover the line of 20? I think it'll be around that mark. For a betting side of things, I think Luke Ryan and Jordan Clark are not bad bets for 20 to 25 touches, depending on what you want to get out of your multi. I also think Marcus Bontempelli for 20 to 30 touches is a safe bet. Fremantle do not tag. They back their system. They back their star-studded midfield to get the job done. For goals, I don't mind Tracy and Amos. Amos has been very consistent this year, despite the fact he's a low possession player. Josh Tracy has been a little bit hit and miss, I got to say. There's been games where he's been really, really good, and there's games where he hasn't hit the scoreboard. So I think Tracy and Amos should get on the board tonight against the Doggies defense, which is a little bit compromised. The other game tonight is... from a SuperCoach side of things, I'll be captaining Marcus Bontempelli tonight. I had to use my VC last night on Nick Dacos. Unfortunately, my only zero is Jack Watkins. I've had to choose out of Bont, Butters, Grundy, Gawn, Nazaya, who to captain. I'm just going to go with Bont because he is the most consistent player over the last 5 seasons, and he shouldn't cop any sort of attention tonight in what should be a high-scoring contest. The other game tonight is at the Adelaide Oval. It is Adelaide taking on Port Adelaide at 8:10 p.m. Adelaide are favoured by 10 points. I think Adelaide should get the job done here. They don't have their captain in Jordan Dawson once again. These are the ins and the outs for this one. Jake Saligo comes into the Adelaide team. Also, Neil Bullen comes in as well. And Dan Curtin, who plays first game of the season. And James Ball-Lace. Out for Adelaide comes Charlie Edwards, Finbar Maley, Nick Murray, and of course Jordan Dawson for personal reasons. For Port Adelaide, in comes Todd Marshall, and out goes Jack Watkins. I'm looking at this as like Adelaide have too much quality in their front half, even though it hasn't been realised in the last couple of weeks. Last week was a tough one because they got absolutely trounced in the midfield by Brisbane, who had themselves just suffered an uncharacteristic loss the week beforehand to Melbourne. This is a bounce-back game for the Crows, I feel. I think the likes of Rankin and Rochelle will be able to have a big impact in the forward half. On the betting side of things, I like Jason Horne-Francis. I'll also be bringing him into my SuperCoach side this week. He has a nice run, and there's no one from Adelaide which will put attention into him tonight. I also don't mind Rory Laird for 25 touches. I know Laird's a little bit older, but he's hit this mark in every game. He's played a decent time on ground. He came back into the team the last few weeks after a small injury. He's gone bang, hitting 25 disposals. He still gets his kick-ins. I just think they're going to rely on him in what's going to be a tight contest tonight and one with a lot of pressure. I like Rankin for 2 goals the most out of all the goal scorers. Riley Thilthorpe is a bit of a wild card. He kicked 3 goals the other week. He kicked 1 last week against Brisbane. He kicked 3 goals 2 weeks ago. But besides that, he's been just a 1-goal forward. He hasn't had a bag for quite some time. It might open up tonight, but I'm more comfortable betting on Horne-Francis and Rory Laird and Isaac Rankin to kick a couple of goals. We know what he can do, and particularly in tight spaces in showdowns. He's shown that before. He can kick 2 goals in 1 minute after having 3 or 4 touches for the first 3 quarters. Let's move on to Essendon versus Brisbane. But just lastly, I will be tipping Adelaide 9.5 points. If you're confident, they should cover that line. I think we've seen before that we convince ourselves that Port Adelaide or Adelaide are closer than their opposition in these sort of games, and it can break into a blowout. The only thing I'll say is the man who usually does that is Jordan Dawson, who is not playing tonight. So just a little bit wary on how big his impact is. And he was Adelaide's best player only a week ago against Brisbane in that heavy defeat. Let's move forward to the next game. And it is on Saturday. It is Essendon hosting the Brisbane Lions at Marvel Stadium. The line is 46.5 points. That's a lot in Brisbane's favour. They probably will hit it. They've owned Essendon in the past. We have a debutant in Cody Curtin for the Brisbane Lions. These are the ins and the outs for Essendon and Brisbane. In comes Jaden Newen for the Bombers. In comes Max Kondogiannis, who is on the bubble in SuperCoach. He's an option at 113,000. In comes Nick Cox for his first game in over 600 days. What a great story that is. Many people in football thought Nick Cox's career was over due to multiple concussions. It's great to see him back out there playing for the Bombers. And in comes Jade Gresham. Out goes Elijah Sardis. Out goes Darcy Parish, who was managed. Out goes Archer May, who suffered an MCL injury but looks to be okay. And out goes Isaac Kako, who has a stress reaction in his back. For the Brisbane Lions, in comes Dane Zorko, in comes Cody Curtin, who I just mentioned, and out goes Oscar Allen, who has a small break in his foot, and out goes James Tunstall, who has been omitted. Brisbane should really towel up Essendon in this contest. 12:35 on Saturday afternoon. I think that's going to be a time Essendon fans get used to. We're going to be hidden most weeks because our performances have been so deplorable. And our performance last week against Collingwood was utter shithouse. All Bombers fans listening to this, you know that is the truth. You can't predict what sort of Essendon's going to show up week to week. From a betting side of things, I think Lachie Neale will continue to dominate Essendon. 30 touches at about $1.60, $1.70. Essendon don't tag. At least when they try to tag, it doesn't work. They're not a team that has any sort of system which can be employed on a regular and consistent basis that has bared any sort of success over the past few seasons. So I think Neil will continue to dominate in this matchup. I think Ashcroft also has a big chance to get 30, but I prefer Neil. Goals, Bailey 2, Cameron 2, Morris 2, all over $1.40, between $1.40 and $1.80. I think Brisbane will score 120 points in this contest, so they're all decent bets. I don't mind on the Essendon side of things a goal for Sam Durham. He's $2.20. He's playing more as a forward, I think. He's getting opportunities. He's a great overhead mark. With him in the midfield mix a week ago, it didn't really work, so I can see him playing more as a forward on Saturday. And for Brisbane, goal scorers, singular. Sam Draper's at about $1.60 to kick a goal against the old team. Darcy Fort is about $2.20. I think that's decent as well. And Zach Merritt to have 25 touches. If Essendon get pumped, it may not happen. It was relatively close. It'll happen quite easily because Brisbane will not put any attention into Essendon's main man. Will they cover the line of 46.5 points? You betcha. Brisbane should win by 10 goals. Let's go to the next game on Saturday afternoon. It is West Coast hosting Richmond at Optus Stadium, 4:35 our time here in Victoria. These are your ins and your outs. In for the West Coast Eagles is Harry Schonberg. In comes Tom Cole. And in comes Matthew Owies. Out goes Bo Allen. Out goes Jack Williams. Out goes Sandy Brock. And for the Richmond Football Club, in comes Jaden Short, in comes Tyler Sonsie, in comes Oliver Hayes-Brown, and out goes Hugo Ralph-Smith. Sam Lawler, who has suffered a partial Achilles tear. That's not good at all, Sammy. And out goes Samson Ryan. Also, on the Richmond side of things, Josh Gibbs will miss the rest of the season with an ACL strain. Terrible run of injuries for poor Josh. And Richmond just have a million injuries. Josh Smiley. Also, the other Josh, he's got a quad tear. He's had about 15 different soft tissue injuries, including all the way back to his draft year. It's a bit of a disaster at the start of Josh's career. We so hope he can get onto the park. He was in consideration for pick 1 early in his draft season, which is a couple of years ago, before repeated injuries have struck him down. Back to this contest. It is West Coast favoured by 19.5 points. I do think West Coast will win this one. Richmond are just so compromised with the injuries at the moment. And I just think West Coast will be more consistent when playing in Perth. They already have a win over there against North, who I think are going to get very close to playing finals this season. Betting side of things, I like Josh Lindsay. Should have played him in SuperCoach last week. He should have 20-plus touches in this one. He dominated kick-ins early in that game. I think the ball will flow through him. They've given him the keys to that back line. Also like Willem Dersma for 20 touches. He's getting centre ball up attendances now. He's got more of a midfield opportunity. They're looking to the kids now, and Dersma is their best kid. Milan Murdoch, he's a little bit older. I like him for 20 touches too. He's also getting more centre ball up opportunity. He's getting in and amongst it as he worked his way back from a hamstring injury. Tom McCarthy's an option at halfback. I don't think he's been as good the last few weeks. He didn't get as much pill in what was a good matchup against St. Kilda, so I'm a little bit wary on him, but he should get his opportunity. On the Richmond side of things, I like Taranto and I like Jack Ross. West Coast midfield have given up a lot of touches to midfielders in the past, so Taranto and Ross are two of their prime movers. When it comes to goals, I don't hate Tom Lynch. I know it's crazy for 2 at $1.50. He can easily kick 1 goal 6, but he will get the chances against a West Coast defense, which has been porous in the past. And Jake Waterman hasn't kicked the bag all year, but Richmond represents a decent opportunity. Him to kick 3 is about $1.80. You know what? I probably wouldn't recommend it just because he's not in great form, but this could be a high-scoring game between two teams which have been struggling over the last few seasons. The other one is Seth Campbell. Bang, bang, bang. $2.30 to kick 2. I think he'll be in and amongst it, and he won't get as much attention as the other players on the Richmond team. Let's look to the game at 4:30. It is Geelong taking on North Melbourne down at the Cattery. These are your ins and your outs. In comes Jake Kolodjasny for the Geelong Football Club. In comes Sam de Koning. Out goes Jack Bowes. Out goes Mark Blitzarves, who was injured. That's a big injury to monitor just because of who North Melbourne's ruckman is. He is an absolute monster. In for North Melbourne comes Charlie Comben, and in comes Tom Lemires. Out goes Toby Pink, and out goes George Wardlaw, who has a bit of gastro. He's a little bit of an illness. Poor old Georgie boy. The line is suspiciously 27.5 points. In the past, Geelong have done whatever they wanted to the North Melbourne Football Club. Okay, they've had them tapping, by the first quarter. So a line of 27.5 is a little bit interesting. I think Geelong will cover that line. I think Geelong are still a better team than North Melbourne, but the issue is the ruck, and that is the space I want to bet in. It is Tristan Sherry to have 19 or 20 touches, so definitely 20 touches. Sorry, we don't have missed by one on tab anymore, only on Friday Night Footy. I'll put out my Friday Night Footy multi at some point this afternoon. By the time you hear this, it might be 5:30, 6 o'clock, so make sure you check out my Twitter, you check out my X, and you check out my Instagram story over at Slam Talk Sports. But yes, I like Tristan Sherry for 20 touches. He's going to face up against Mitch Edwards in this one. Seemed like an absolute mismatch for the most dominant physical ruck in the AFL. I also don't mind Jeremy Cameron to kick 3 goals. He should feast on a North Melbourne backline, which hasn't been great over the past few seasons. Scratcher Neal is also about $1.60 for 2 goals. A couple of multis, alternating Jezza and alternating Neal is what I would do for this contest. Otherwise, I'm not as interested just because of the tag threat. We know Finn O'Sullivan's going to tag someone. It might be Bailey Smith. It might be Max Holmes. We also know that Oshin Mullen might tag someone. It could be Harry Sheasel. It could be Luke Davies-Uniacke. Who do you think it's going to be on Saturday afternoon? I think it's going to be Bailey Smith. I think Bailey Smith, as I say Smith like that, is going to be tagged by Finn O'Sullivan. Bailey is one of the fittest players in the competition, but so is Foss. So it seems like the perfect matchup for me. And also Max Holmes is playing half back. Not sure they want Foss playing as a half forward, where he can impact so greatly in the midfield. Oshin Mullen, I'd be going to LDU. I think LDU is the man you got to stop. They were able to put the clamps on him a little bit last weekend, GWS, and it had a great impact on the game. North struggled at the start. LDU didn't have much of a touch. Sheasel obviously is their best player. I mean, he's a freak, Harry Sheasel, but he's the type of player you want to tag. He's more an accumulator compared to LDU, who's the burst player. I think Sheasel's the better player, but he's going to have 30 touches pretty much no matter what. He can go to the half back, he can go to half forward. He's just a magnet. LDU is someone you want to frustrate, you want to get on it, you want to get at to in the contest. So I'd be looking to tag LDU. And that has nothing to do with my SuperCoach team. Okay, let's look forward to the next game. It is Saturday night, Carlton taking on St. Kilda. The line is 12.5 points in the Saints' favour. Ooh, a couple of old Blues returning to play against their old team. There's a bit of spice in this one. In terms of ladder position, no one really cares. It's 2 average teams, but Tom De Koning and Jack Silvani will play against their old team for the first time. I give Carlton a big shot in this one. I don't know about you guys at home, but St. Kilda aren't exactly playing great football, and Carlton just hang around every week. St. Kilda aren't a high-scoring team, so it does seem this could be evenly matched, and they're able to eke out a couple of goals from their midfielders. They get a few lucky breaks. They're able to build up that lead beyond just that. That margin of that 25-point margin is Carlton footy, isn't it? If they're up 25 at three-quarter time or half-time, they're like, oh, we've lost. But if they can build on that in the third quarter, they will win this game. Will I tip them? I do not know, but I do think Carlton are a massive, massive shot. From the betting side of things, I like Newman and Florent. For the last 3 years under Ross Lyon, half-backers for the opposition rack up touches. We just saw Josh Lindsay have a career day against St. Kilda. I like Florent and Newman because they are the designated kickers at Carlton. They do get the kick-ins, and they are fine footballers who should do well in this matchup. 25 touches. Newman hasn't done it all year, but I think there's a good chance to do it in this game. Same as Ollie Florent. He teeters around that 17 to 22 touch mark. I think they're both a good shot to have 25 in this one. Otherwise, Nazaya Wanganeen-Miller is a great SuperCoach captain option, but also like him as a betting option for 30 touches. Same as Jack Sinclair. And on the goal side of things, well, Mark Pittenay returns to the team for the Blues. As I mentioned, I forgot to mention the teams, apologies. Mark Pinnett comes in, Oliver Hollands comes in, Harry Mackay comes in, Adam Sard comes in, out goes Lewis Young, Carlton fans rejoice, out goes Ashton Moyer, out goes Cooper Lorden, out goes Taylor Byrne. How could I forget to the teams? For St. Kilda, in comes Liam Stocker, in comes Liam Henry, out goes Liam Ryan, out goes Hunter Clark. This whole show is about the teams, and I forgot about the teams for this blockbuster game on Saturday night. As I said, Nazaya and Sinclair would be in my bets. Mark Pittenay returns to the side. He's $2.20 to kick a goal. He's kicked heaps of goals this year. He's got a hand injury. Does that mean he plays more forward? Does it mean he tries to kick it out of the ruck again? Because he's done that about 10 times this year for goals. I don't know, but he's not a bad bet for a goal. Neither is Mateus Philippou at $1.60. We've seen him kick goals the last few weeks. I think they're trying to give him more of an opportunity in the forward half. Then his CBAs just keep going down, so he's not a bad shot in this one. And McGovern has been the man, hasn't he? Mitch McGovern has been the man for Carlton in the last 5 weeks. He's kicked a lot of goals. Him to kick 2 is $1.80. We know the Saints are more of a miserly defense, so it's not going to be as easy. But in the Dome, considering he's one of the main options, and considering Mackay's off a concussion, he's going to have to be rucked maybe a little bit in the forward half if Liam Reedy only plays half a game. Then I could see McGovern benefiting from having the weaker matchups out of all the Saints defenders on him. I think the Saints will just win, but this won't be a pretty contest, and I think it's going to be going right down to the last second. Now, what about those Sunday games? We've got 2 huge games on Sunday. It is Sydney taking on Melbourne. D's 3:15, but it is 3:15 up in Sydney. The Swans, they are looking so good this year. They are favoured by 31.5 points against the D's. These are the ins and the outs. In comes Peter Lannams. In comes Hayden McLean. Keep in mind, these are Sunday squads. By the time you listen to this, they will be confirmed. You will know if they're going with a 2-ruck strategy at the Swans, which is why Peter Lannams has been named in the extended bench. Also, Isaac Heaney, that superstar, comes back into the Sydney squad, and Lewis Melican. Out goes Tom McCutton, who has suffered an injury. I think it's likely that he goes out and Melican comes in, just like for like. But we're not sure what other changes they will make, because obviously Isaac Heaney will return to the squad. And Peter Lannams, that's one to monitor if you want to bet on a Grundy or a Gawn, or you want to captain them, because we could see a 2-ruck strategy from both teams here. We could see Lannams play, and we could also see Max Heath play. And we expect Max Heath to play, considering he's played the last 2 weeks. So I wouldn't want to captain Gawn or Grundy if they're both playing lower time on ground, or one of them's playing in the forward half, particularly Gawn. For the Melbourne side of things, in comes Harrison Petty, in comes Paddy Cross, in comes Jack Henderson, in comes Andy Moniz Wakefield to their extended squad, and out goes Jai Kelly, who's unfortunately suffered another serious knee injury. He's had a rough run at things, the former number 1 draft pick in the mid-season draft. Hopefully we still see him again at AFL level. He's had such an awful run with these knee injuries, but I actually know he's a decent player and really, really hope he can get back on the park at some point. What are my thoughts on this from a betting side of things? Well, it has been the Swans halfbacks, which are likely to rack up the ball against Melbourne. It is Nick Blakey, it is Riley Bice, but also is their smooth-moving handball receive players like a Justin McInerney. I think McInerney will have a very tidy day. Obviously, he won't be tagged. We think that James Jordan will tag Cozzy Pickett in this one. Cozzy Pickett is arguably the best player in football right now. I'm trying not to be hyperbolic, but he is that damaging. So James Jordan is the man that likely goes to him. And on the Sydney side of things, do we think Colton Tholstrup could tag anyone? He had some tags earlier in the year. I don't know if they're going to stick with that one. He tagged Caleb Sarong to great effect, but not everyone's Caleb Sarong. Not everyone is as accepting of a tag as the Fremantle champion. Okay, but Colton Tholstrup also has had 13 kick-ins the last 2 weeks. Utterly ridiculous. Where on earth did that come from? I do not know. If you want to back Tholstrup for touches, you can, but I'd prefer to operate in that Blakey and Bice and McInerney space. And would I be trading in Isaac Heaney and SuperCoach? You wouldn't. He got tagged last week or last game by Toby Bedford. Probably wouldn't be looking to him in SuperCoach. Hopefully he gets tagged again and his price comes down. But he's always a big chance to kick a couple of goals. Not as interested to bet on this one. I'll update you on Sunday once we have the final squads. Captaincy, as I said, Gawn and Grundy. I'm going to avoid both. I'm going to captain Marcus Bonampelli, and I'm going to hope for the best when it comes to this game. Final game of the round coming up. It is Gold Coast hosting the GWS Giants on Sunday Night Football. A rare Sunday Night Football game for the Gold Coast Suns. In comes Lachlan Goulburn, in comes Sam Colosi, in comes Joel Jeffrey, in comes Alec Davies, and in comes Ned Moyle. Out goes Zeke Ulan, out goes Jared Witt, who has been managed. On the GWS side of things, in comes Kieran Brings. Jimmy Brings? Kieran Brings? It is Kieran Briggs. In comes Harry Ralston. In comes Fontampelli, Joe Fonte. And in comes Jake the Snake Riccardi. Out goes Nicholas Madden, who will miss an extended period of time with a serious injury, which I'm not sure what it is. I did read it before, but he's out for a little bit. It is Briggs time again down in Western Sydney. The line is 16.5 points. Oh, this should be a great game. I think it's a public holiday on Monday, which is why we're getting this night game on the Gold Coast. It's usually the Q Clash in this spot. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then they have the public holiday the next day. And it's usually Brisbane tailing the Gold Coast Suns by about 60 points. But instead, it is the two expansion sides. It is the Expansion Cup. It should be a closer contest. I'm looking to bet in the Callaghan space, in the Whitfield and Ash space as well. Callaghan have 30 touches as $1.92. He's been tagged the last couple of games. Gold Coast will not tag him. He will run free. We know that Matt Rowell is not playing in this game as well. So there's just one less player he has to worry about getting the ball off, because Matt Rowell, not only is he a great ball winner, but he's a bloody tackling machine. So it's just bloody hard to get your hands on the pill when you've got that red-headed monster flying around the whole place. So I like Callaghan to have 30 touches. I like Ash and Whitfield to rack the ball up as well. What I would do if I'm putting a multi on is put Ash for 25, or put Whitfield for 25 in a different one, or put one for 30 and another one for 30 and another one combined with Callaghan. I think they're going to be very, very close to that mark. When it comes to goals, I like Aaron Cadman and also like Bailey Humphrey. I like them both to kick 2 goals. You're going to get decent value on those ones. Cadman is more that he's becoming the number one forward, but Jesse Hogan's still treated like the number one forward, which he should be. So he's really able to capitalize on mismatches, or he's not copying one of the best defenders, Aaron Cadman, and he's slowly emerging to be one of the best forwards in the AFL. And Bailey Humphrey, while this one I'm not as certain on with Matt Rowell going out, I do think Petrarca and Anderson and probably Miller get more midfield time. Humphrey stays half forward. He's so good at kicking goals in quick succession, so I do think he's decent value, and he's just so damaging. Kind of like a Jordan De Goey last night, or kind of like Nick Watson, even though they're different players. They're so impactful in the front half, you're really hesitant to take them out of that position, because you know they can kick 2-3 goals, which can really set you up for a big, big win on Sunday Night Football. That's it. That is Slam Talk Sports for one more Friday. Hope you enjoyed it. You can catch me every single Friday here on YouTube, but also listen to me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can find me online at Slam Talk Sports on TikTok, on Instagram, on X, on YouTube, and wherever you find your very, very fine podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you listened to the EDFL Tonight podcast as well. We had some great guests this week. Greenvale senior men's coach Anthony Rock and Matt Cronin to talk about the Pat Cronin Foundation and the huge initiative that will be going around the EDFL and all the local clubs this weekend to sponsor or promote the awareness of what is a really, really great cause, and talk about a big issue in society that we just don't talk about nearly enough. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you listened to that, and I'll see you all tomorrow at Lebanon Reserve. Yeah, I'm making my EDFL play-by-play commentary review. You'll hear Slam Talk Sports live talking about the football. It is Strathmore taking on Moonee Valley in the Women's Premier Division. I can't wait to crack into that one with the always terrific Tara Murray, one of my co-hosts on the EDFL Tonight podcast. But until then, enjoy yourself. Make sure you get on my mega multi of the weekend. You spend all $5, okay? The coffee you're going to buy tomorrow, you're going to buy 10 of them, okay? Because you're going to put $5 aside and put it on my multi for tonight. But until then, enjoy yourself. And the one thing I want to make certain of, just promise me one thing, that Marcus Bonampelli drops 5,000 points tonight, and we all have a great weekend. Until then, I'll see you later.